Now, get ready to talk hockey. Streaming from the Oilers Live Studio. Subscribe or follow today.
Hey, it's Michael here, Oilers Live for Wednesday edition of Oilers Live and the Oilers Offseason. We're going to try to get through a little bit of Oilers news. What's going on with the Oilers tonight? I've got as guests and co-hosts Ryan, senior writer for Heavy Hockey Network, Mr. Ryan Lotsberg, and our new favorite guest, Mr. Kevin McCurdy from everywhere, from X, from Low Tide, from you name it. He's pretty much been on it, and we're happy to have you again, Kevin. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me.
I should, you know what? If you're going to join, continuously, I should have something for you. I got to get a bio written so I know what to say. And
yeah, I sort of appeared out of nowhere. Hey, like sort of, I don't know, the last 18 months of Dad's life, and just since then, I guess. So it was nice to catch up with him on hockey. Unknowingly at the time towards the end of his life, but it's set up real nice to come and meet some new people and have some fun conversations and kind of take my mind off things. So
absolutely
good fun.
Well, we're happy to have you for sure. So tonight, obviously, there's big Oilers news. We're going to talk about that. Let's start there. Lotsy, you want to kick us off with just a quick rundown of what the latest and greatest Oilers news. We'll have a little chat about that. We don't know how long, for those that are tuning in now, and we're getting a good crowd already. We don't know how long we're going to be on tonight. It is off season, so it's a chance to take a break from hockey a little bit, and so we won't drone on as we may do on occasion. All right, Lotsy, give us the goods. What's the latest and greatest?
Yeah, the big news, obviously, that came down yesterday night was the Oilers acquiring Isaac Howard from the Lightning in exchange for Sam O'Reilly. It's a interesting prospect pick or exchange there. We got 2022 first rounder, didn't want to sign with the Lightning and expressed a preference to play for the Oilers, and the Lightning made that happen for him, and they got a good prospect going back the other way in 2024 first rounder Sam O'Reilly. And we haven't done a show since the end of free agency, so we're gonna get into who's in, who's out a little bit tonight. Big one for the Oilers was Andrew Mangiapane, 2 years by $3.6 million.
Yeah.
And we got Curtis Lazar as well for league minimum for a season. And there were a couple of depth signings in the organization, Matt Tompkins and Riley Stillman as well. And on the way out, we had Victor Arvidsson getting traded out early that morning. And Connor Brown, Corey Perry leaving, John Klingberg leaving. And I think that's where we're at right now. So a little bit of change on the bottom of the roster.
Yeah, it's really kind of some interesting changes and some guys that have been big parts of the Oilers for the last two seasons. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Let's start first with Isaac, or better known as Ike. And also, I was waiting for a comment to come out, but there it is. There it is. We'll talk about that later too. It's my non-playoff mustache. We'll talk about right now. Let's talk about Isaac Howard. Also goes by the Iceman, I guess. And Ike, definitely a ton of confidence, right, in this guy. Just ever since he got drafted, his profile's just gone up and up, right? And I'd say it started with the World Juniors, right? I mean, it was kind of on its way up already, but the World Juniors really sort of solidified him as a top prospect. What maybe we start with you, Kevin. What do you know about the kid? What are your thoughts on him? What's your thoughts on this trade? I mean, in general, I mean, Sam O'Reilly was a well thought of prospect in the Oilers prospect pool, so it's not a nothing trade as far as prospects go.
No, I think it's probably I think it's a high cost. I personally would have liked to have spent less to get him, but that's, the team really wanted Howard. He's 2 years closer to the NHL. So I think that's a big component of why they made that trade. They're in win now mode, and they need all the firepower they can get. I don't know a lot about the player. I watched some highlights, I guess, previously. His release is exceptional. His hands are quite good. He's got a super sneaky release. Not the hardest shot. It's not a heavy shot like, like Warren Fogle or somebody like that, but super sneaky. He is a bit of a character from what we've been able to discern thus far. He's definitely got ego to go for a couple days. That kind of ego is important as long as he can translate his play to the NHL level. So I'm sure we're going to figure out through the preseason and into the first few games of the regular season what that looks like for him or not, if he's ready to go or if he needs to go hang out in Bakersfield for a little bit.
Yeah. Good. All good points. And the ego is definitely shows through every time the guy gets a microphone. You can hear it. The confidence oozes from this kid. Ryan, your thoughts on this trade? I know for those of you that don't know, Ryan wrote an article today for Heavy Hockey Network at heavyhockey.com. Much to what you said, Kevin, was a little bit around what was it too much, right? And what was your final analysis on that, Ryan?
Yeah, the headline may have been a little bit more baity than I normally like to go with, because I honestly don't think it was an overpay at all. I think it was a pretty fair ask. Late first rounder for a late first rounder, from that perspective, it's pretty even. But Isaac Howard's prospect, or his profile's only gone up ever since he got drafted. So Tampa was probably trying to get a little bit more than what the Oilers were probably initially offering, which they don't have a 2026 first. So the quickest first rounder they could have offered was 2027. And I don't know what Tampa would have wanted with a 2027 first rounder. I just don't. Like, that doesn't impact their team in any meaningful way for the next 4 or 5 years. Right. So I can see why they would have turned that deal down and asked for a guy like Sam O'Reilly. But from the Oilers' perspective, giving up Sam O'Reilly, yeah, good prospect, but he's projected to be a third line center, whereas Isaac Howard is projected to be a top 6 wing, the guy that can get you 30, maybe 40 goals at some point in your career. Like, I'm sorry, but Sam O'Reilly is just not that, and I value what Howard can bring a little bit more than what O'Reilly can bring. But we can find another guy like O'Reilly. It's tougher to find guys like Howard. You can't teach that kind of skill. To Kevin's point, excellent release, very deceptive, very sneaky. Can score from distance at college, but as you're saying, it's not a heavy shot, so I don't think he'll score from distance like that at the pro level. But the deceptive release and good hands will definitely get him a few points. He knows where to be in the offensive zone. He can create offense. He can make plays. He has some defensive warts he's got to figure out. He's not the most physical player. He's got the size to handle himself. Like, he's not that small. He's 5'11", 190. So he's not going to run guys over, but he can handle himself out there.
It's nooch sized, doesn't it?
Show that willingness a little bit more, right? He credited his coach Adam Nightingale at Michigan State. Like, he got transferred over there and worked under Nightingale for a couple of years. Figured out the defensive side of the game a little bit more than what he had coming from his previous school. So that's been good for him. But we'll see how it goes. Like, I love this play long term. Yeah, we know the Oilers are in win now mode, and we're all excited because the prevailing thought is he's ready for the NHL right now. I've said his ceiling is top 6, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be a top 6 producer right now, right? Ceiling is where you can get to at some point down the road. Will he get there this year? Unlikely. There's going to be a learning curve, and it's going to take him a little bit of time to figure it out, especially if he's got details to figure out on the defensive side of the game. But so I like the prospect, but I'm keeping my expectations fairly low for year one.
Yeah, I mean it's look, you can never know with a prospect, right? Like it's when they come in. I mean, high hopes have been for a lot of guys that have come in and done nothing in this league or next to nothing. But I do love the fact that he's coming from the NCAA to the NHL versus coming from the CHL at an older age, right? I mean, I'm I might like to when teams draft CHL prospects, they're used to that. They're used to the schedule a little bit more, but NCAA, like they're playing against men, and and it's really damn good hockey, right? And it's so good for the development, good for the maturity of players. I think that a lot of the different things around the game are just really great, and so it should. I think it's gonna come out well. You look at McKenna, right? Like he's signing with Penn State. There's a reason that he wants to go to the NCAA for his last year, right? I think that it's not to mention there's money involved, but
I was gonna say, my man, there's
NIL money, anyone?
$250,000 to play hockey
There's
for
some
a
money
university.
involved
I
for
think I
sure.
would probably take that
Yeah.
too.
But I think there's a lot more to it than that,
Yeah.
too, right? Like from a just a development angle, it's really good. And you talked about it, Kevin. Like this kid's confidence is next level. I said it in our group chat. Like I probably wouldn't love hanging out with the guy, but I'm gonna love him on the ice, right? Like he is, he's gonna ooze that when he plays, and it should be fun. Where he plays in the lineup, who knows, right? Like you want him to play obviously top 6. But as Oilers fans know, we've had expectations like that of a number of players over the years, only to be sadly disappointed and see them playing either, third, fourth line or AHL minutes for that matter. So, I hope we don't
We
put
just
too much
saw Quinn
pressure on
Hudson,
him right
right?
away. Yeah.
We
Well,
just saw
exactly.
Quinn Hudson had similar point totals to Howard this past season. He got 2 games at the end of the year, and he was invisible, right? Like, and those weren't even high quality regular season games; those were garbage games at the end of the season, and. So you just don't know, but at the same time, we can go off of what people are saying, or people who do know are saying. Everyone else is saying he's pretty much NHL ready. So, I mean, I'm not a scout. I haven't watched the kid play live. I'm going off of highlights and what everyone else is
Yeah.
saying about the kid. There's a chance he ends up needing some time in Baco. I don't know, but there's a range of possible outcomes for year one. But like I said, it's a long-term play, and I like it.
Well, I'll tell you, like when these guys come to the NHL, they need to feel like they deserve to be there. And that's not going to be a problem for Howard, right? Like he's got that confidence, right? Like,
Yeah,
they have to have a bit of that.
He's got the whole Evander Kane vibe going from an attitude point of view, like young Evander Kane. Maybe not the same size and power forwardiness, but he's just kind of got that swagger about him from what I've seen too, right? Like there's a video of the highlights from him playing his last season in the NCAA, and man, that kid can rip the puck. And he's smart too. Like there's some good playmaking stuff in that highlight package. It's on my Twitter if anybody wants to find it. But Bob Stauffer is projecting him as a top line left wing right now. And I know, in big old text at the bottom in the brackets, it says subject to change, but I wonder if I've been wondering this for a while, if the coaching decisions to not play the youngins has more to do with the understaff than it did with Knobloch himself. And I wonder if we're going to see a change in the deployment of guys under the age of 26 with a new coaching staff in place, because Knobloch was an AHL coach before this, right? It doesn't seem real to make a lot of sense to hate on the kids as an AHL coach, right? Like, that's just kind of how I see it. So we'll see what happens there.
That's an interesting thought, for sure, because to your point, and to what's gone on in the last couple of years, as everybody knows, is the Oilers have gotten older, right?
Yep.
So add a little bit of youth and play that youth throughout the season. I don't think it would hurt them. It's really an interesting, though. There's a lot of, if we go to Stauffer's projected lines, there's a name I think we should talk about that we've talked about in the group chat is Philp is not on there.
Yep.
Right. Thomas X listed as sort of off the top, as an alternate, if you will, right? Lazar as well.
I would not be the least bit surprised to see 2 regulars from last season subtracted from this roster by the time opening night hits. Whether they end up elsewhere or whatever, I will not be surprised if they try and bring some of this new blood in instead.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this, guys, and I'm just going to put this out there. We'll put a pin in it because we haven't talked about this either, which is we're going to talk about the no trade, all that stuff that went out, because that's all interesting too when you put out this roster and you start to talk about it. And I think, what we've talked about sort of offline, to me, seems more like the reality about this team than anything else, which is Bowman's gone to everybody and said, what are you willing to do for me to make this team better, right? Meaning, like, what would you be willing to accept a trade if if we did it? And Oilers fans were quick to point out that Darnell Nurse said no, right? And some other folks, obviously, in the media, et cetera. But
yeah.
I think the suspicion is that question was asked about just about everybody.
Yeah, I have a pretty good idea that it was asked of more people than were mentioned in that article. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Let's I think I'll be surprised if Janmark starts on the main team next year. Whether he's in the minors or whether he's on another team, I just won't be surprised to see that, and I also won't be surprised if Henrique is relocated as well. So we'll see what happens there. It sounds like he said no to a move before, but it sure seems like they're stacking up the lineup to have good reasons for people not to be playing if they're not part of the core vision going forward.
What do you guys feel like? Is that lineup kind of how it's starting to shape up? Does this look like a faster lineup than we had last year?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Savoy is McLeod 2.0, right?
Yeah.
But smarter. And that's not to slight on McLeod. McLeod had some advantages. He's 6'4", right? Like he may seem like the super fast dude, but he also had some size with him, and he wasn't afraid to use it all the time, right? So McLeod took a lot of extra hate that he shouldn't, but I think Savoy is going to spend a ton of time on Leon's wing, and we'll see how that. But that, can you imagine Savoy and Podkolzin with Draisaitl? That forecheck is going to be absolutely frigging nasty, like just nasty to play against.
Well, and teams are notorious for taking the winning squad of the Stanley Cup and trying to match what they did. And the forecheck of Florida was unbelievable, right? And to to up that speed, get the forecheck going, do that type of move wouldn't be the least bit surprising with what we saw really sort of stopped the Oilers in their tracks before they could get going in the Stanley Cup final, right? So it'd be nice. It'd be nice to see a little bit of speed that we haven't, the same type of speed that we'd see when we had a McLeod, right, on the team, right?
Yeah.
And and it's been I think the Oilers were faster than we gave them credit for last year, if that makes sense, but I don't think they were as fast as they will be this year. Your thoughts, Ryan?
I mean, they definitely got slower last summer. Like, you lose McLeod, you lose Broberg, you lose Holloway, you lose Vogel. Right? Those are all fast guys that good skaters. And I didn't think it would be that big of an issue because we replaced them with more experienced and smarter hockey players that have proven to be more productive than those guys. But I mean, it cost us in the regular season for sure. Now, I think there was some load management going on in the regular season with the Oilers. They just preserved themselves for that June series, and Florida was still faster than them, and they looked like they had more energy for sure. So whether it backfired, whether they just had too many old slow guys, we'll find out. But I think getting younger and faster was definitely necessary, though. Like, being the second oldest team in the league with nothing young really coming, especially at this time when we've got a big negotiation looming. We need a winning game plan for the next 8 to 10 years to make sure that someone in particular is excited about being here, right? So I think that was a necessary shift.
I just want to address Rich's comment about losing Hyman lost the cup. I think losing Hyman was critical, but I think Nuge breaking his hand lost them the cup because both of those guys were excellent in all the series leading up to that. And I think Nuge also had a groin injury, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So he was pretty banged up by the end of the playoffs. So I think the Hyman was like a master alarm kind of situation, and Nuge was a death knell. And it just took a few extra games for that to come together, unfortunately. But I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean,
obviously Hyman was a huge loss, but I still think Florida would have won the series. Like, Hyman might have got 3-4 goals, and you don't get to strategically place where those 3 or 4 goals came from. Like, if he gets the OT winner in game 2, it's a different series, right? But there's no guarantee that he scores that goal. Maybe he scores a couple of goals in game 3 when we lost 6-1 and makes it 6-3, right? We still lost big, but Hyman contributed a couple of goals. So it's hard to say, but I think that Florida was just straight up too good. The forecheck was really good. Our defense had trouble moving the puck quickly. We lost battles on the wall. We couldn't get anything going through the neutral zone. But give Florida some credit.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. Florida is an amazing hockey team. That is an absolute juggernaut of a team that Bill Zito has built, much to the chagrin of anybody who wanted Bill Zito to be the GM of the Edmonton Oilers a couple seasons back. But that is an incredible hockey club, and we got our work cut out for us if we want to beat them. Hopefully we get a third opportunity, and maybe we'll change the recipe up a little bit.
Yeah, and some strangers in the chat, and he's got a good point, right? Like, the health of the Oilers was an issue going into the playoffs, really, right? Like, straight from the start, and this is, but it's the same thing every year, right? Like, key injuries are going to affect outcomes, and but both teams, like, the list of injuries Florida was playing with, Tkachuk was playing with the major adductor, I think, or something along those lines.
And tore the adductor right off the bone.
Yeah, Reinhart was injured. I think Barkov had an injury.
Yeah, Barkov's hand, there was a massive scar from some injury.
Yeah. So, I have a hard time with the the whole injury conversation, because every team plays injured, though key injuries will. Riley brings up Ekholm. To me, that was huge, right? Not having a healthy Ekholm. through.
I honestly think bringing him back in turned out to be a bigger mistake as the series went on. They had a vibe with the defensive core without Eck, and that's no slight against the man. He's been a lifesaver for this team on numerous occasions, but it's pretty clear that he is still dealing with some kind of injury. And what do you do in that situation, right? Like, I understand the call to put him back in, but he was clearly struggling more and more, and he was at fault for a number of goals against as the series went along, and they just didn't have that kind of room or momentum to play with. And I mean, Connor Brown got his brain bonked at one point, and he wasn't quite the same after that. Like, the list goes on, right? So
Brown
it's not
wasn't
the
even
only reason they
remotely the
lost.
same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not the only reason they lost, though. Like, not even close. They just weren't good enough. Right? Like, Florida was flat out, take all of that other stuff out, refereeing, injuries, whatever. None of that shit matters, really, at the end of the day. It's the end of the day, just did not play as well as Florida played.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's it. Florida's a good team. We got to acknowledge that, I think, as much as we hate it. It's is what it is. You don't win 2 Stanley Cups in a row, by luck, right? Like, it just is what it is, right? Like, yeah. So, I mean, that brings us to where the Oilers are at now, right? Like, you make the adjustments you have to make, and of course, cap constraints are always an issue, right? Especially, these are 2 teams that are made up very differently, right? Like, the Oilers have a core group of 4 players that, take up 40 million of the cap space, right? Like, that's, it's just hard to build a team around that, right? When you have 2 superstars like Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, who they get paid fairly for what they give to the team. But on that same token, you've got, arguably 10 million less, and add in a nurse contract, which everybody loves to talk about, but it affects the overall structure of the team. Which is, brings us full circle back to why this Howard trade is so important, right? If you can get a couple of players like this, I think about, everybody's watching baseball now. The Jays finally lost their winning streak, but in baseball, when you're playing against teams like, of course, they don't have the same cap constraints, but you need a guy to come in that's younger, that, can surprise you every season in order to play against the big guys in baseball and in Major League Ball. This year it's Bagra, right? For the Oilers, they need a Howard, or they need a Savoy to come in and really change the game, right? Change the outlook of the Oilers and do it on an entry-level contract, right? And I think those are, if the Oilers are going to do it, this is the year, right? Like, this is finally, we've got, Rich does point out that Florida did have 10 million more. And
yeah, I had somebody challenge me on that math. I think there was some favoritism applied to how, like, I didn't include retention or any of the things that were, part of the bigger picture. But yeah, I do think the Oilers were under the cap by $10 million or something therein, and I think Florida was slightly over. So that hurts for sure, but we got to be able. Part of the reason we have so many forwards right now is we got to be able to stack a team deep enough that we can take on injuries and still have enough skill left to power through it. It's clear that playing against Florida is a meat grinder experience, right? So we sort of just got to power through that.
No choice, really. Right? What do you guys think? Okay, so Riley, watching on Facebook, thanks for watching, Riley, asks, what do we think about Bob's projected lines? Do you guys think the lines as is? I like this kind of discussion to me is a little bit odd, because I always think, like, at this time of year, or when the regular season starts, the only thing I really care about, even as a fan, is that the Oilers make it to the playoffs by deadline day, right? That they're in a position that they look good enough to make it there by deadline day. In fact, both Edmonton and Florida, I thought, played it perfectly this year in terms of like not worrying about President's Cup or President's Trophy, right? You just worry about making it, and then you put it all in, right? And so, when you look at the lineup, Bob's lineup, what do you think about it? And is it good enough to get us in a position come deadline day that the Oilers are confident in making the right moves? Maybe Ryan, start with you.
Yeah, and I saw Bob's lines earlier, but I'd have to look at them again just to get full
Yeah,
confirmation
have
of
a
what
look.
they
I mean,
were.
we
I
can
know he had
start.
Howard up
I
on
know
the top
Kevin.
line with David
Yeah.
and Hyman, right? But the reality of the situation is we got lots of guys that can play lots of different positions, and a lot of guys are going to get their looks, right? Just because, let's say Howard does start on the top line with McDavid, doesn't mean he's going to stay there for more than the first period. Right?
First penalty against, man. First penalty against. That's all it's going to take.
Yeah, exactly. Um, so having said that, like we got a lot of guys that could get a look up there. I think Steph Voy is probably going to be on Leon's wing. Like Kevin pointed that out earlier. I think that's a good fit. They played well with each other in the couple of games that Savoy got during this last season. And I like that fit. So I hope he does get a lot of time with Leon, but I'm sure other guys will get a look too. Tomashek could find a way into the top 6 for a stretch, especially if Hyman starts the year injured. We've seen Kapanen up there before, right? Like Frederick could go up there.
And Giappani.
So there's going to be lots of different options. But I mean, Bowman said that he got Mangiapane, who sees him as a top 6. I don't necessarily love him as a top 6 option, but I think he is the best top 6 option on the roster. So I think he's going to get a spot up there, right? So I actually like Mangiapane, Draisaitl, Savoy as a second line. Keep Nuge with McDavid and Hyman. And then line 3 is where you start to have some fun. Right?
Yeah,
Maybe you go
I
Howard,
just
Henrique, Frederick, because he likes to play the right side.
well, since McDavid's more slid back into his playmaking role rather than his, and he's still play driving to a huge extent, right? But he's not shooting. He's not been shooting for 2 years now. For whatever reason, whether it's a mental thing, whether it's a change in philosophy, whether it's an ailment that's been lingering for a while, he's not really shooting. So if you give him a reliable trigger man that plays smart enough hockey to be in the right places, or 2 of them, look out, right? Like, I think McDavid's playmaking ability is pretty underrated, and I think Draisaitl's an excellent playmaker. So we just got to surround them with guys that either get the puck to those guys or put the puck in the net.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the thing every year, isn't it? You see who can play with, who can create the line or the pairing on those top 2 lines so that Draisaitl and McDavid play fewer minutes together, right? That's kind of the end result. I like the Mangiapane thing on the second line because, and I've said this before, Draisaitl played well with Yamo, right? Like that was, and the way I look at Mangiapane is he's a better version of Yamo, like, and he
What's
plays.
Savoy then?
Yeah, yeah, good point, fair point, right? I just think Mangiapane is a little bit more of a veteran in the league, and so that's maybe more of a long-term solution. We'll see. I mean, the beginning of the season always tells you a lot, right? And to your point, sometimes, and we've seen this. Every coach is like this. Guy takes a penalty at the wrong time in the first couple games, and he's forever on the 4th line, right? And we'll see what happens. Those first 3 or 4 games, is something else. The conversation in the chat has quickly moved to Schwartz, which we didn't even mention. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
that's
big
my
Oilers
mind.
news. this week. Obviously, maybe the trade of Howard could have happened earlier, but they maybe they timed it perfectly to get the heat off of the Schwartz news. Dash talked about this last week or the week prior, which is Schwartz going out. Maybe give Skinner the Skinner Pickard duo a little bit of time to kind of say, hey, this is now it's their opportunity to shine, right, with a new goaltending coach. Depends on who you talk to, goalies or otherwise, on how important goaltending coaches are, right? Like I've heard one NHL goalie say it's super important, then the next one say they don't really care, and then Bob talks about it all the time. One of the benefits of a good goaltending coach is scouting the other team's goalies, right? And understanding, where to go. I mean, how much does that change the Oilers' fortunes, right? At the end of the day, what do you guys feel about this Schwartz change? Is it just something that was needed? Is it something that's going to make a big difference? What's your gut tell you, Kevin?
I have complicated feelings about it. And the complicated feelings are rooted in the fact that the man worked for the organization for a decade. He survived like 3 GMs and 5 head coaches or something like that. I'd have to go back and count them, but it's a lot. And people that are assistant coaches or that level of position don't frequently keep their job through that much management turnover if they're kind of shit at their job, right? Like that some point that he would have been gonged, and he's sort of been widely respected around the league as one of the better goaltending resources out there. And people say, well, the results don't support that. And then I'll counter with the list of goaltenders that he was provided to try and do his best with, which is, frankly, for the most part, outside of Cam Talbot and Mike Smith to an extent, not really, much to write home about. So I think maybe a change of perspective is good. I would like to see them do a goaltending center of excellence, where they have a director level goaltending, management type, and then a bunch of specialists underneath that handle all the various like sub things, whether it's skills, whether it's scouting, whether it's nutrition and fitness. Like it's the most important position on the ice, and you can't spend enough money on it. As far as I'm concerned, and none of that counts against the cap. So why wouldn't you? We've had a hole in that position for a decade now. Let's do something different and unique and build a set of management resources that lets us develop and scout talent properly. I think that's a huge perspective change that, I'm not confident they're actually going to do it, but I think they should.
Yeah, the Oilers though have been slowly changing the front office over, the last few years, right? Like to make it a little bit more like other teams in the league, not so old school anymore. And so, that could be the next move, right? I don't know if having Schwartz was the reason they didn't do it though. So but it could be the reason that, the change in goaltending coach could be the reason they do it. Right. And a little bit more, that's a little bit more of a by committee sort of scenario than it is, just one guy working with the team.
Yeah.
Lotsie, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts on Schwartz, like after 10 years or 11 years, whatever it was, it's probably time for a change if we're not getting the results that we need. My observation with the goaltenders that he's worked with is Skinner's the exception to this because he had his best year as a rookie, but they always had their best years in year 2 with Schwartz, and then they started a nosedive that was irrecoverable as Oilers. Right, if we saw it with Talbot, we saw it with Koskinen, we saw it with Smith, and Skinner. Like I said, he had his best season as a rookie, but it's gone downhill ever since. So I don't know what techniques that Schwartz is giving his goaltenders. I don't know what the conversation's like on a day-to-day, but we need a consistent level of production from our goaltending, right? It can't just spike and then suddenly go down. Right? All these goaltenders, they have a penchant for giving up softies. They have a penchant for giving up goals early in games and putting the team behind the 8 ball early. It's those little things that have to stop. So it can't hurt to have a new goaltending coach. I think it was the most sensible and easy solution to going into this season. I mean, the cap situation, you don't want to use it as an excuse, but the harsh reality of it is you got Leon Draisaitl getting a $6 million raise or $5.5 million raise, and you got Bouchard getting another $6.5 million raise, something like that. Right. So that's any amount that the cap jumped up this year went to those two guys. So the reality of the situation is they didn't have much space to work with, and there's a lot of other holes on the roster to fill. And those guys have gotten you to inches of a Stanley Cup 2 years in a row, and they're each under contract for one more year. And so I think it makes all the sense in the world to give them a fresh set of eyes and a fresh voice to just see how it goes for one more year. And next year, when the cap goes up by a little bit more and we only have one giant raise to give out, then we can make more decisions from there.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head in terms of contracts and that, like, whether you love Skinner or not, he's going to get a raise if he stays with the Oilers next year, right? Like at 2.6, like, goalies get paid more than that, and to have two goalies at 3.6 for a year, I mean, I just don't see any downside to it. To my point, when we enter the season, as long as we get to the trade deadline, there's going to be a goalie available at the trade deadline, right?
Yep.
Like, put all your chips in then, right? Don't, and, stealing from you, Lotsy, stealing a little bit from Dash. I'd say like your best move is let the Schwartz contract. This is just not a renewal of the contract, right? Like this is not him like being, fired per se. It's just not renewing his contract, but let it run out. And then you go, you give Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard the benefit of the doubt that, that was holding them back a little bit. You can give that sort of option to the fans if that's what they want to believe. And if, if Skinner comes back and he's absolutely lights out, which he could be, I mean, this is the time in a goaltender's career that they start to shine. But you have this year at 3.6. I go for it, right? Like, use that money for other purposes, which they are, right? And they have no choice. They've got to, there's not a lot of money to go around. So, this to me is, whether it's Schwartz or whatever, I don't think it. I'm kind of in your as well with you, Kevin. Like, it didn't make that big of a difference with the team. Like, I don't think Schwartz is the reason the Oilers haven't won a Stanley Cup in however many years, right? In the 10 years he's been around. But at the same time, the goaltending hasn't been quite good enough when it's been needed. So yeah, time for a change, move on, and then thank him for his service and hope he doesn't go to a competitor and make you pay for it. Right? Like, that's the only thing I hate is when you let guys like that go. To your point, if he's got a good reputation out there, Kevin, like somebody, if the Flames end up picking him up or somebody picks him up and he ends up, they have a goalie that's doing extra well, there'd be somebody will come out of the woodwork and tell you, I told you so. It's just
I'm worried about Anaheim this year, man. I'm
Anaheim?
I'm so worried about Anaheim because those guys are sort of all on the cusp of being primed to actually like go somewhere. And I just think that Jay Woodcroft has a real chip on his shoulder about this team, and he knows how to pick it apart. And yeah, that's something that concerns me. But Anaheim's already given us enough difficulty without Jay Woodcroft, and I think that's going to be a better coach team this year between Quenneville and Woodcroft.
Yeah, like I mean, are you worried that they could take Edmonton out in terms of like playoffs, or or just make it a little bit more crowded in the Western Conference? I agree with you. Like Woodcroft's going to have something to say, right? Like about yeah. Like
Sorry, dogs.
no, it's all good. It's all good. Yeah, like what worries you the most? Like, is it I mean, it's already every year has been seemingly a little bit more competitive to get into the playoffs every year. So, I guess if one more team is in there in the mix, it
Things
makes it
could get
hard.
real interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the other team that's going to be in there maybe is Utah, right? Like those guys are have quite a bit of talent as well. I just want to go back to the goaltending thing though. I think that people have to consider what's actually available, and I mean really available. That is an upgrade over Stuart Skinner right now. I recognize that, and people will say that any goaltender is an upgrade, and I just can't agree with that, right? Like, he is a pretty decent goaltender for the salary that he's paid. He takes a lot of shit from people in the Edmonton Oilers fan base for that in some cases is unfair. And I think that, you have to consider what's available as an upgrade. We can fancy the trades for the Soroskins or the Shesterkins or the whatever. The reality is it's probably not going to happen. We don't have the assets, we don't have the cap space, and I don't think there's an organizational desire to trade for a home run hitting goalie right now. I think the cost is just too high because the next slices are going to hurt. It's going to be, who else is left? Who else is left that'll move? You're going to trade Nuge. You're going to trade Hyman. You're going to trade. What are you trading? What's left? Because that's where you're going to get your cap from.
I think you get a good idea too during the regular season where Skinner's really at.
Yeah.
Right.
They sacrificed Dustin Schwartz, right? Like they straight up just sacrificial lambed him to buy them some more time and a fresh perspective. And I think that I think you're right, Michael. If they don't get it right by the trade deadline, then they'll see them pick something up, whether they can pry UPL out of Buffalo or Jari out of Pittsburgh or some other reclamation project that, or if by some freak accident the Islanders lose their mind and decide to make Sorokin available, then you move whatever you have to make it happen. But I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, I think they're going into the playoffs with Pickard and Skinner. I don't see a goaltender coming out at the deadline that's suddenly going to change the fortunes of the team. And goaltenders that come on board at the deadline rarely win Stanley Cups. Like that strategy has never proven to work. So I don't know if you're going to get anything more than organizational depth at the goaltending position at the deadline. So I think they're more than confident and comfortable going in with Pickard and Skinner because they've both shown that they can get the job done in the playoffs. Now, obviously, they haven't crossed the finish line, but they can win with that goaltending. I stand by that. There were some moments that we didn't like from both guys in the Cup Finals, and sure, but there were lots of moments from the entire team in the Stanley Cup Final that we didn't like, and that was not the reason they lost. I mean, goaltending could have been better, but it wasn't the only reason they lost.
Not even close.
So, and I really think they're going to go into the playoffs with Pickard and Skinner. I think we're just going to have to accept that.
Yep. Well, and like I said, if somebody shakes loose at the trade deadline, I think there is still a good chance they will trade Pickard out and start Pickard either in the minors or somewhere else. He's loved around that locker room. It's pretty well known how highly respected he is. But then you need to ask if the players are being elevated because they're well liked or because they're skilled enough to do the job that they need to do, right? Like Pickard's great. He came in and pitched. He did some stuff that he honestly hasn't done in his career, but at the same time, he still comes across to me as, a goalie that likes to play a little bit to the limits and sometimes go beyond them, and he ends up with goals that shouldn't go in because he's overplayed it and whatnot. And you can say that about any goalie, but I just think that they can probably shore up Stuart Skinner potentially a tiny bit better.
And
Yeah.
if they were going to change his position, I agree with you. It would be Pickard that they would upgrade on. I just, like I say, I don't know the market right now. I don't know what the market's going to be like at the deadline. It's got to be someone that's markedly superior to what they have. And I don't see that shaking loose at the deadline.
I still, like Skinner has shown moments of brilliance, right? Like he's, he had some really great games in the playoffs, right? He'd come back and he seemed unbeatable for a few games, and then and then he sort of seems human again for a couple more, and it's just consistency. Add another year on this guy, right? And we've seen goalies at his age range all of a sudden turn into all-stars, and it could be. And why not? Look, I wouldn't have been against the Oilers changing the goaltending position in the offseason this year, but only if it made sense, right, from a trade perspective. And it didn't. It obviously didn't. I think Bowman's a smart enough guy. There was nothing that made sense. It also makes sense to go into the new season with $3.6 million on two goalies, and one that I think is only going to get better in Stuart Skinner, right? Like if he goes someplace else, he'll come back to Edmonton and he'll burn us a couple of games in the regular season. It, right? And there'll be right. Like he's good enough goalie to do that. Right. He's been good enough to get the Oilers to the finals 2 years in a row.
Yeah, like I said, I think that he takes a lot more hate than is needed. Like I said, I wonder if there's anything that they can do just to shore up the backup position a little bit. I don't think Pickard is the wrong answer. I just don't know if he's the right answer. Does that make sense? Like that's
And some strangers got a point on Shelovs. Would he be a good option? I mean, he just ran through the AHL playoffs, won the Calder Cup MVP, and he led Latvia to a bronze medal in the World Championships a few years ago, right? So I think Shelovs is a guy that has a ton of potential, and with Vancouver signing Demko and signing Lincoln into long-term deals, he's probably available. So yeah, that's a guy I would be interested in getting, because I would rather have somebody whose best years are ahead of them right now rather than someone whose best years are behind them. So yeah, Shelovs I think would be a good option to consider. Is the NHL ready right this second? Maybe, maybe not. But as long as you keep Pickard in the organization, you're okay. The other guy I would potentially go out and trade for right now that, I mean, not particularly crazy proven, doesn't have amazing numbers, but Arvid Soderblom from the Blackhawks. There's a bit of a contract dispute happening there right now. He's had good underlying numbers in at least one season. Last season was kind of the underlying numbers didn't look so good, but he played a lot more games, and I think he took a step forward overall. And he's 25 years old, so like that's the kind of age range I would be looking at if I was going to do it. Like someone that makes some sense long term, has some potential to overthrow Skinner at some point, but may not necessarily do it. Could offer some support and a little bit of a challenge. I mean, that's the kind of guy I would look at.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing with those guys too is when they're playing on a team like Chicago, right? Like you just don't know what you're going to get when they get onto a solid team. You had something to say there, Kevin. I saw you.
Yeah, I get the other thing that keeps coming up. A couple things. Clean as Lid talked about Shelovs within the division. Well, I mean, Vancouver already traded Kane within the division from us and traded us Podkolzin within the division and probably regretted it later. So it doesn't seem like Alvin is particularly opposed to trading within the division, unlike a lot of teams. The other thing is I sort of want to see the AHL goaltending situation turn into more of a development shop. Like, I want to see some guys getting some heavy games in there to see what goaltending we have. I don't want to see any more like Colin Delias and contracts that are, frankly, kind of a waste of everybody's time. That's it's no offense to Delia, but like, he's not going to be an NHL goalie. He's too far in his career to be an NHL goalie at this point. You know, let's get some guys that are up and coming and see what we got and let them play. And if Bako struggles a bit, then we can address that. But I think that's where a lot of guys need to get some more reps in, because we've wasted a ton of time with Jack Campbell down there, and Rodrigues' development was impacted and subsequently went sideways a little bit, and now the team hasn't renewed him. The other thing I actually quickly want to address is a couple of people keep bringing up Carter Hart, and there's two things I want to say about that. I don't think it's appropriate for anybody to speculate on the outcome of the World Junior Sexual Assault trial, first and foremost. And secondly, I would, based on things that I've heard, be strongly suspect that they'll be subject to supplemental discipline, even if the verdict is returned as not guilty, and they will not be playing in the NHL for a foreseeable future. So I don't think it's wise to bank on that as some kind of dark horse. I have other personal thoughts about the situation that also kind of weigh into it, but just leaving on the pure technicalities alone, that's kind of a struggle to justify a signing like that.
Yeah, no, good points. And I've kind of stayed out of that for all sorts of reasons, but those are definitely some of them. And it's not worth discussion right now. That whole Carter Hart thing just really isn't.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, and until it is, we'll leave it at that. All right. I mean, we've talked about forwards. We haven't really touched defense. We've got a few minutes left, maybe half hour left. We can touch a little bit on the defense if you like. Not much is really changing there from what we saw at the end of the season. What do you guys think? Like this, on this, it's kind of the top 5 is set, right? At least from the get-go. And then the question is, who we see kind of move forward a little bit more. Is it Emberson? Is it Stetcher? Do you guys think we'll get more out of Emberson this year?
Yep. I think they're going to play the crap out of him in the first half of the year to see what he's actually got.
Yeah.
He still needs, he had some conditioning issues. I think he really started to struggle a little bit towards the end of last season, and definitely into the playoffs. But I think that there is a player there. I don't think they would have signed him to a 2-year, $1.3 million a year deal if they didn't believe there was a player there. And I think their positioning on the Stetcher's contract being, bones, bare minimum, league minimum, tells you where they're at in terms of their 6 and 7. Whether that holds true, we'll see. I think you'll see Wallman maybe move over to the right side on Nurse's wing. I think you'll see potentially Ekholm Bouchard, assuming Ekholm is healthy, which I'm not sure is a safe assumption right now. And I think you'll see Kulak and one of Stetcher or Emberson, unless they decide to bring somebody up from the under team for a look to see if there's anything going there.
Yeah, what do we have in the cupboards for defense? Not really a whole lot.
Bo Akey.
Yeah, Bo Akey.
That man can move the puck
there's
too.
Alec Regula as well, which Bowman brought in on waivers last season. He was hurt all last year, so we didn't really see him. But I know we brought him in on waivers and protected him all year for a reason. But I don't think he's going to make the team or anything like that. But they probably see a player in Regula.
Yeah,
Yeah, who was the other guy that Leppinen? There's another guy that
Yeah,
a couple
they
of
brought
guys
in
that
Lotsberg,
I'm
leading defensive goal scorer from the Finnish league this year. So he's a wild card. He's interesting. I'm intrigued to see how that plays out.
Well, and Aki and Regula are right shots, so that could play into their favor.
And Aki's nowhere near ready. He's another 2-3 years probably, I'm guessing.
No,
but like
his
Regula's
puck movement, man.
already.
Aki's puck movement, even in the preseason last year, was really, really good. Like,
oh yeah, like, there's a ton of potential there. That's a guy I would love to see be a part of the long-term solution here because of what he can bring.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean this. I think the one good thing, like, and call it how it is. I mean, this decor. If and the big question mark is on Ekholm, right? Is good enough to do what I said is get them to the deadline, right? And it's not. It's got some holes, obviously. Like it's not perfect every night, but the addition of Wallman, I think, at the deadline last year was a great addition. Um, it's solid. I don't have a problem with it, and give them a season of playing together, and we're also getting a new coach, right? Like we're gonna have some new coaching looks, and so we'll see what happens there, and how that comes about. I think from a defensive standpoint, it's not perfect, but I'm all right with it going into the new season.
I don't love having either Wallman or Kulak constantly playing their offside. Like I would love to see an upgrade on the right hand side come in, but when you have four lefties that are arguably top four worthy, like I mean Kulak is borderline, but when you got four LBs that are that good, one of them's got to play their offside, right? So it's just kind of the nature of the way it is. But yeah, Kevin alluded to it. Michael, you alluded to it as well. Ekholm's health. I mean, Bowman kind of indicated that they felt Ekholm was healthy during the playoffs. I don't think he was at 100%. I think we can all kind of agree on that. I feel like that groin injury has been nagging him since training camp 2023. And it got worse, obviously, at the end of last season when he had his little setback there that forced him out of the lineup. But Bob Stauffer alluded to the team potentially getting some cap space using a mechanism of some kind. That's where my head went initially. Do we see a long term injury situation with Ekholm? Right?
I think you're
Is
more likely
surgery on the table? Because if that's the case, if he could be out the whole year like Kane was. That's my biggest worry with Ekholm right now. And if that's the case, then I think you do want to look at bringing somebody in on the right side. And that might have to wait till the deadline because, cap space.
Yeah, I think that's probably it's a possibility. I think the mechanism, he said a little bit of cap space, so I wonder if the mechanism is them burying somebody like Janmark in the minors, right? Like that's a little bit of cap space. Janmark's at 1.45 million for 2 more years, and you can bury 1.15, I think. So
yeah, that's right.
Still have a little bit left over, but they would at least be able to get some of that back. I don't think that Bowman is as enamored with Janmark as some of the other GMs and coaches have been. I don't think it's really his style. I like Janmark well enough as a player, but he's like a master at zone entries and no hands to finish with. So,
I like Janmark as a fourth liner. Like that is where I see him as a best fit. Would I be sad if we lost him? Not really, but you got to have a guy that can PK and that's got a little bit of speed. I mean, Janmark's not exactly a burner, but he's not slow either. So, but you need a guy that can be defensively reliable, that can PK, and it's just not going to hurt you out there, right? You can put Janmark out there, and he's not hurting you. Doesn't always help you, but he's not hurting you.
No, and that's been the thing about Janmark for years, right? Like everybody's always said he's not a guy that makes defensive mistakes, generally speaking, and I think he slid a little bit in that category this year, but still always pretty reliable. It's just not a lot of scoring to go with it.
Well, that's the thing. The only time you yell at Janmark is when when he's on a good scoring opportunity and he flubs it, right? Like you never yell at him in the zone. You never put your hands on your head and say, "Oh my God, Janmark, what were you thinking?" Right? Like he's just steady Eddie when it comes to that, and that's good. But at the same time, like I think you need a little bit of excitement on that. In the offensive zone, and it drives other things, right? So you could have a guy that's great defensively, but he's got to have a little bit of excitement in the other zone and just drive the team as a whole. Like if you're spending all your time in the offensive zone, well, you don't necessarily need a guy like Janmark anymore, right? But the Oilers have got to get there. They got to be a little bit faster, which we think they will be. And maybe they start to do that. Maybe they start to spend less time in the defensive zone, even on the third and fourth line, which I think would be a massive upgrade. Kapanen's likely playing third or fourth line, which is where he should have played, right? Like and he's got good speed. I like that. I think he's the kind of player that would be good.
He rises to the occasion, though, right? Like he was, aside from the last two games of the Stanley Cup final where everybody was kind of dog shit, he rose to the occasion and he was clearly enjoying the pressure rather than suffering from it. You see a guy get a star that in a game and come out that jazzed up to the crowd like that. That's a two-way street, right? Like you have, the player feeding off that and the fans feed off that, and that's good for the organization on both fronts.
Yeah. I'm curious. I mean, cabinets when you get a guy from waivers, I'm always curious how he shows the following season, right? Like he's got to your point, like rising to the occasion, he's got something to prove when he gets picked up. What happens now?
Well, they only gave him a 1-year extension, right? So he's still he's in a contract year from his point of view. His only option is to fight or he'll get thrown on waivers, right? Like the team picked him up because they liked his analytics. They said they'd been looking at him for a minute anyways, and that may be true or maybe BS, who knows? But they picked him up and he did okay. Like it wasn't great all the time, but he was fairly reliable, and occasional sit for him didn't seem to hurt him at all. And we got younger and faster, and he's got a little bit of a mean streak in him too when he wants to. So I think we probably overpaid there by 200 grand or something, but who cares, right? If he's a third liner, that's a fair wage.
Yeah, absolutely. Some conversation about Lazar in the chat. Thoughts on picking him up? I mean, to me, this is just a decent move for a minimum contract for a guy that was a favorite in the city of Edmonton for a little while. I love Lazar for his interviews. Like, there's nobody more raw than Lazar. Like, he just, it's. I just think he skipped every media training moment that he could ever had, and we're the benefactors of it, right? Like he just kind of tells it how he sees it, and
got the Corey Perry thing going with that, like
yeah, exactly. And so that's good. I don't think he hurts the team by any stretch, and at that contract. Why the heck not? And to Rediscovery Record says wouldn't expect much out of him. I doubt he'll be playing on a team by 2026. I mean that's fair. I don't think we should expect much out of him. He won't play every game next season. I think that's, a given, and he'll be in and out of the lineup, and there'll be nights where he's noticeable. Like, he's got the talent. He really does.
He's 51% as a righty on the draw too, which is why they probably really picked him up, right? Like,
Yeah.
that is something we have struggled with since Derek Ryan left the lineup. That man had a lot of things going for him, and unfortunately, Father Time just caught up with him, I think, and that's too bad. But I think Lazar is really your stab at kind of replacing that and adding something a little bit different to the mix as well.
Hey, Lazar was McDavid's line mate at the World Juniors. You don't think he's going to get 50 goals on McDavid's wing this year?
That's how
Probably.
No
No,
magic,
yeah. Another
Hey,
Max
you
Jones,
guys
but
are right.
Max Jones is going to stay in the minors, is my opinion this year. I've been pretty underwhelmed by
Yeah.
him. He came in and had that incredible, like, life altering first game, and then it's probably not that great after that. But all of these guys are likable dudes, right? Like, we're not picking up a bunch of guys that are clearly a pain in the ass to have around. They're all good dudes, and they all have something in common with each other. But I think that Lazar is probably your 13, 14 type of range, maybe 12, depending on
Yeah,
how things
Lazar is
go.
a guy that you can count on to come into your lineup and not hurt you
Yeah.
when someone's injured, right? I mean, maybe he emerges as your fourth line center. Maybe if you're right about Janmark getting sent down, and if he outplays Philp and Tomaszek's better on the wing, maybe Lazar finds his way into the 4C spot. For that reason, he's right-handed, good at draws, like you were saying. But
Mhm.
odds are he's 13 or 14 in the press box most nights.
Yeah, and I do love the idea of having guys in the on the roster that are making it competitive, right? That is not an easy walk on, right? Like, those guys that are all fighting for a spot, so that guys like Max Jones come in and have a game like that. They do that because they've got even a little bit more to prove, right? To stick on the lineup, right? Like, it can't be simple to make the lineup, right? And so and these guys are all getting paid next to nothing as far as NHL salaries go. I mean, they're still getting paid well, but next to nothing as far as NHL salaries go. And I think that's a good thing. Have a number of those guys. Make it tough to hit the lineup, right?
Yeah.
Even on the fourth line. Why not? Some stranger, Trent Frederick. Thoughts on him?
I think we talked about him in the last pod, if I'm not mistaken. But just to
Yeah.
revisit quickly, based on the pile of contracts that I saw signed on July 1st, man, that contract's looking better every single day. If he can, it took Leon a while to recover from his high ankle sprain. Even into the following year, he wasn't quite right for a little bit. But if Frederick can get that behind him pretty quick, and we can see some of the Frederick that everybody loved in Boston, I think that contract is pretty quickly going to become value for the organization. Maybe not this year or next year, but in the following 6. There's only 2 ways that contract ends: a fat buyout, or the best contract the Oilers have ever signed besides Zach Hyman, right? Like, that's the only 2 outcomes, I think.
Yeah. And look, Frederick prior to injury was brilliant, right? Like, as far as, contract versus player, there was nobody, and nobody complained about it when the Oilers picked him up, even though he was on injury, right? Well, that's not true. You just look through, you can look through X and you'll find lots of people complaining, but there was, this guy, like, he was good prior to injury. He was good. Worth that prior to injury if he's anything like that. And I think the Oilers, would know that before signing that contract. They'd have that expectation. Clearly, they believe he'll get through that. The injury was a big part for sure. Ryan?
Yeah, I argued that Frederick was an overpay when the signing happened, and I still feel that way even after July 1, although I feel a little better about it after July 1, like Kevin kind of alluded to. There's lots of silly money thrown around this time around, but at least those contracts were usually only 3-4 years at the max. This is 8 years. Uh, this contract is probably going to age well as the cap goes up and the percentage of the cap that he takes up gets smaller and smaller. But for right now, when the Oilers are in a bit of a cap crunch trying to win a championship here, I didn't love him at that price point. But at the end of the day, it's not going to make or break us to have overspent by 600K or something like that. Um, Frederick he can play center, he can play right wing, left wing. Like I don't mind him as a player. I just think the acquisition cost was way too high based on something he did 2 years ago, and not based on his most recent data set, which was lower production in Boston and then a poor playoff run, partly due to injury. I'm sure he's capable of more than what he gave in the playoffs, but I don't expect him to be a 40-point guy again. I just don't. I don't see him as a top six forward. He can moonlight up there sometimes. He'll get a look, but I see him as third line. That's probably where he's going to thrive. He runs around, hits some guys, puts up 15 goals. I'll live with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I gotta agree. It sucks losing the draft pick to retain salary when that was kind of unfortunate, right? Like to me, that's the overpay part of the equation. Is we paid retained salary for somebody who basically didn't play till the playoffs, and like I said, I got a lot of hope for that contract, and you like the dude a lot. He's clearly a spiritual fit with the organization from a personnel point of view, but it's just a matter of if we can get him back on track on the score sheet.
Yeah, I mean that'll be the at the end of the day, that'll be the real qualifier of that contract, whether it was good or bad, and I think we'll know. I think we'll have a good idea early with that, and you just hope that it's nothing recurring, right? And look from a pricing perspective, if he's anywhere close to what he was, then that's brilliant. Yeah. Well, we got a couple minutes left, guys. Just about time for a last word. I think Lotsie, we gave Kevin and family, I guess, last word last time. And so, Lotsie, we're going to give you last word tonight. I'll go. Kevin, you can go after me. We're as always, we're going to try in the off season. We'll try be on Wednesday nights at our usual time, 9 p.m. Mountain. You can find us at heavyhockey.com/ or youtube.com/heavyhockey, or on X, formerly Twitter, at Oilerslive. When Kevin's on, he's gracious enough to I guess live stream it at the same time. Pair it with this stream. So we've had a number of people tune in through that side as well. And then you can find us on Twitch at Heavy Hockey, and also Facebook at Oilers Podcast is where you'd find it on Facebook. Like, subscribe, do all that stuff. Check out heavyhockey.com for articles during the off season. We I think as we see this Oilers team go, my thoughts are exactly what I always say every year, which is get into the regular season, get to the deadline to a point where you're comfortable enough to make trades. I've been all right with the body of work so far with that Bowman's put in front of us, right? In terms of, with what he had at his disposal, right? Like this is the Oilers will always, and a lot of teams are running through this now. There's always no move clauses and all of that keeps coming up. It just is what it is, right? And you can't, when Nurse's contract came up, you couldn't foresee. It was an underpay before, right? And then he gets the long-term contract, and it was maybe a little bit more, but he deserved it at the time, and it's just kind of handcuffed the team going forward a little bit. But I think as the cap goes up, you'll see that that'll change. I as we talk tonight, I look at this, the goaltending, that 3.6 million, where this team's at, the gaining of speed. I'm actually feeling, thanks to the two of you tonight, I'm feeling a little bit better of the Oilers' fortunes going into the new season. I think there's just enough there and enough sort of in the cupboards that they'll do what it is that I need or think they need to do, which is get to that deadline, right? And then they can retool, whether it's from a goaltending perspective. And you've got Picard that, I think the great thing about having a guy like Picard is he is so well liked. It's always talked about, right, with every team and with everything, that he's an easy guy to maybe make a trade for at the deadline, right, to shore up on that backup spot with who knows who, right? So, at the end of the day, I feel pretty good about the moves that are made. I don't think the Oilers are done. And I think there's enough competition going into camp that the lineup will change at least a few different times, few different iterations before we get into the regular season. All in all, I'm pretty excited about it. Kind of curious to see, if Kevin, if you got during your last word, if you got any insight into, maybe something the Oilers may or may not be doing, feel free to let us know. But, I kind of think like over the next little while, we'll see a couple more moves as well with the Oilers over the next couple of weeks. And they, they're just little tweaks at this point, right? And hopefully we kind of get some answers in terms of where the team is headed with all the players. Anyway, that's it for me. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Kevin, you're up.
Yeah, I think you touched on a lot of good points there. I think the team is in really good shape. I think they're likely to not make too many more changes. I don't think they need to. I think they have a team that's capable of getting through the regular season, at least to the trade deadline. They got more than enough pieces to put that together. The team as a whole, I'll be interested to see how the coaching staff change things. Obviously, with Mark Stewart being out, and or I'm assuming Mark Stewart's out, but Glenn Gulitson being out for sure, and Dustin Schwartz being out for sure. It'll be interesting to see how special teams develops. That was kind of a sore spot for them in the playoffs. The penalty kill was struggling. The power play is not its usual lethal self. It was still plenty good, but not league shattering like it was a couple of years ago. So like the league literally adapted to not give the Oilers penalties because of how effective their power play was. So I'll be interested to see if they have a change in philosophy from a coaching point of view, if the special teams has some new pizzazz to it come the start of the season. And I guess we'll see what else is, Bob says, subject to change. And there's no better insider than Bob Stauffer, in my view. So I think it's safe to say that they've got at least a couple irons in the fire.
You bet. All right, Lotsy, you're up. You know the drill.
It's going to touch on Bowman's free agency period to start here. I think he's handled it very tactfully, and I think he's done it the right way here. He moved out Kane and Arvidsson, created some cap space, got Bouchard done, 10.5 for 4 years. Maybe a little higher AAV than they wanted, but they had to protect from the offer sheet from Carolina, which seemed like a very real threat. So we get it, all good. But the big thing that he didn't do is he didn't do anything stupid, right? He may not have upgraded the goaltending like y'all wanted him to, but he didn't hamstring the Oilers for the next 5 years by going out and signing a Jack Campbell contract. But he still did something to address the situation by making a goaltending coaching change. Right. So we don't know who the new guy's going to be yet, or what that department's going to look like. And I agree. I hope there is a department, but we'll see what that looks like. When I heard about Andrew Mangiapane coming on, I was nervous. I was nervous that we were going to give him something like a $5-6 million deal, but that was a decent contract, 2 years by $3.6 million. That doesn't hamstring the team, and it helps us now. That's great. And the thing we got to realize is we've gone through this free agent period. We're still in a position where we're going to be in a playoff spot come the trade deadline, and we'll be able to make moves. But next season, we've got just shy of $45 million of open cap space before the McDavid extension. Even after McDavid signs his extension, which I do believe will happen, the Oilers are still going to have a lot of room to play with to bolster the lineup. And then when you consider the fact that we just got a guy like Isaac Howard, who could produce right away, but by the time next year rolls around, he's more than likely going to be a top 6 wing at that point, right? So you got a cost-controlled top 6 left wing at a value contract heading into a year where we're going to have $45 million of cap space to play with. That's a good omen going forward. That's a good setup. So Bowman looking ahead to the future a little bit while still trying to help us now by making tactful deals that don't really shatter the earth, so to speak. So that's where I'll leave that. And on Howard, I think it's just really cool to see the big prominent American college player wants to come to the Canadian team for once. It's such a welcome, refreshing change of pace. And I know having the 2 best players in the world and going to back-to-back cup finals plays a big role in that. But it just speaks to what we're building here at Edmonton, and it's fun to see. So, yeah, well, thanks for tuning in, everybody. And as Michael said, tune in Wednesday nights, 9:00 Mountain, and look out for written content over the next month or 2 here from Heavy Hockey. And thanks, Kevin, for coming on. It's great to get to do a show with you.
Thanks for having me,
until next
gents.
week, everybody. Thanks for watching, and have a good night.